Hello, and welcome to Today at Dunamis. It is so good to see you today, and it is so good to see you as well, Shaun.
Yes.
How are you doing today, Shaun?
Very good, very good.
Ooh.
And it is a leap year.
It's a leap year. It is.
A leap year.
This is a very special edition of Today at Dunamis. It only happens once every 4 years.
Once, not every 5.
Yeah, not 5.
Once every 4 years, which
yeah.
is great. I know a guy, his name is Trevor Baffles.
Yes.
And he was born on the 29th of February.
Oh my goodness. So how old is he?
I think he's 10. I think he's 10.
He probably is 10.
I heard the story about this older gentleman who was actually arrested for a criminal act.
Oh, yes.
But he was born on the 29th of February.
Yeah.
So he made an appeal to the judge that he should be tried as a juvenile. Do you have that thing that's on the screen there?
Oh, no. That was the one thing I didn't get for you, Shaun.
And
So sorry.
that was supposed to be my lead in.
That's it.
Okay, serious problems.
That's it. I get fined.
Serious
for that.
problems.
That's it.
All
It's
right.
over.
Anyhow, so it is. It was really good to come in there. So tell me some exciting things happening right now in and around us.
Well, I was going to say, you found a very interesting video, Shaun, on a gator.
In
Florida. Of course, Florida with the classic moments. That
Playing golf.
Playing golf, yeah.
Let's put that on right now.
Check
That's
this out.
a
This is
great
incredible.
clip. So here we are, this home in Florida. Can you imagine waking up and going, "Oh my goodness, it's Americans." There's the golf course. You can see the golf buggies going along there. Like, oh my God! I don't think it means the Christian term, but anyhow, it's going out there. Now watch what happens with the next golf buggy. I love this one here. It's going to come in here. Watch this. Look, here it goes.
Only in Florida, Shaun.
Florida. I could see that in North Queensland, actually.
Yeah, Queensland?
Yeah, I could see that. I was at quite a few years ago. I don't play golf because I can't play golf. Yeah. And I stayed at the Sheraton at Port Douglas, and they all wanted to play golf.
Yes.
And I don't come out good playing golf. I just can't hit the ball. I leave these big holes.
I'm with you.
So I was walking around. If you know the Sheraton Mirage, they have, or maybe you don't, there's 9 holes where the hotel is, and on the other side there's another 9 holes. You got to drive through this tunnel. And they had these cones or witches' hats, and they're all out. And in the middle of it was a saltwater crocodile, just lying on the green.
Oh my goodness.
Now, the only barricade was 5 or 6 witches' hats, I call them. And you just have to walk around it. There was no safety. They could have turned around. So we just maneuvered around it and continued playing golf. That's how it was in North Queensland.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, it's quite an ordeal.
Australia for you.
And a little bit of American politics, because we do like politics.
Yeah, I mean, there's some crazy stuff happening right now with Trump and there's some Supreme Court. Democrats are trying to take over on one side.
Well, I love hearing both sides. You know, I flick between Fox and CNN. Fox and CNN, because they get two different stories, and it's good knowing their view. So if you hadn't known, or if you don't follow the American politics, that Donald Trump, who's been charged with insurrection and everything else, has appealed, and he lost that appeal from Washington, D.C., because it's Democrat judges.
Democrat judges.
So he is now being told that it's been accepted by the High Court, which is, I think it's like 5-4,
right? With
conservatives at the edge, who said they will hear if he has immunity in the situation. So the whole idea there is to delay. So they'll delay to June. Then his legal team will say, well, you know, we've only got to November to the election, so don't interfere. Let us delay to afterwards. And if it gets delayed afterwards, and if he gets elected, then he can squash it. So the Democrats says unfair. But now on the other side, the Democrats, they want to rush it through because they don't want him to qualify to run because he's going to be charged. And then even Nikki Haley, the only reason why she's staying in is because she hasn't won anything. Is because she hopes that he'll be disqualified, and that she'll be the next one in. So every group has their angle. Every group has their naughties. Okay, every group. But I love American politics. I always say, when America sneezes, we get out our handkerchief, our tissue. I think it's so... Ed and I are crazy on American politics because it is so entertaining.
And it does affect us. It does. Like you said, it does affect us.
It does affect us. And you know, President Biden, you know, I wince. I when I see him walking with that blank stare and I see in the area there, I'm going like, yeah.
Well, that's America.
I want to know who's running the house. Well, when President Reagan was in, he had a problem with dementia areas. Everyone knew Nancy was controlling his wife. So she was behind the scenes, especially in his second term, the last year or so. And it's often said if he did another term, it's really President Jill Biden.
Yeah.
Okay, it won't be President Biden, but anyhow, it comes in there. We have a special guest today.
We do have a special guest, yes.
And I'm happy to say he is a friend.
Oh, you have a friend, Shaun. That's
I have
great.
a
I think,
friend,
what are you at,
yes.
two friends now? 3
I
friends?
was going for 4, okay? Going for 4, okay.
You lost a bit during COVID.
Did you get on as my friend? Yes, you did. But it's Mr. Brett Raguse. Hello and welcome to our program.
Hello, Shaun. Look, it's a real pleasure. Oh, I've got
the audience is alive. Do you hear that?
Oh, I can. I'm very impressed.
Thank you. It's really good. I want to know why I didn't get that applause. Okay,
well, you're a regular, Shaun. We see you every week.
Okay.
You're lucky they're not booing you.
Well, Brett Raguse is running for our Logan City mayor. Now, if you didn't know it, I endorse him.
Oh.
Yeah, I
that.
do. Yeah, just straight up flat. I endorse him.
Awesome.
You know, even though there's 3 guys, there's only really 2 guys running.
Right.
And the other guy I've never met. And in all his years that he's been in the councils, he's never said hello, never met me. I did see him last week outside our church under the bridge doing one of those waving things.
Yes.
Yeah. So my wife said, why don't you honk the horn at him? I said, because what am I going to do? Honk the horn. I'm not going to. So I just drove him, but he didn't come and say hello. And that's his prerogative, okay? But being transparent, I've had the privilege of knowing Brett. Now it's got to be 8 years
Or
easily.
more. Oh, it would go back much longer to the days of the seat of Ford.
Yeah.
And I've been out of that seat for 14 years.
14 years.
So we probably go back 17 years, maybe.
Yeah.
It would be.
And then what I've really enjoyed is each time I've seen you, I've had a greater liking of you. Can we say it that way there?
Well, that's good. In fact, I'm surprised. I'm very pleased that that you've adopted me as a friend because I just didn't know until this very moment.
No, I mean, this is all about transparency and being honest.
I feel honoured.
On the short list.
They'll get more of my honey tea. So
I think that's what it is.
But I am passionate about politics in all levels, federal, state, and local. And we have been in the dark for 5 years. So 4 years, because that's the term that's sitting right now with the current mayor. And for some reason, he just is not drawn to me, which is fine. And then we had the last year with the last mayor, Luke, and all that, who was fired and all that area there. So it's been 5 years. Now, as a church, we don't believe in being involved in the politics and the things that happen.
No.
I don't believe in that. Never have, never will. But we do like to think that we have an opportunity to share what we feel for our city and that somebody would at least listen. That's all we're asking, for somebody to listen. We are Christian. I'm a Christian. A lot of people say Christian, but we're Christian perhaps in a whole different level in a way. And we are conservatives. And it comes in. So like the first reaction, Brett, if you don't mind me saying, when I said I'm going to support Brett Raguse, they said he's Labor.
That's interesting. Yes. And I can give you an answer to all of that.
Yes,
Shaun.
that's what we want. Yes.
Oh, look, and I'm sure I've spoken about this before. Can I indulge your listeners for a little bit, and a bit of a history lesson, I guess, that one of the things that local government is quite unique and quite different from the other levels of government, and I know you love your politics and you'd understand exactly what I'm going to say. At the federal and the state, because they're constitutional governments that are formed out of the Westminster Protocol. So Westminster is that you have a government and you have an opposition. And by default, that whoever the government is of the day, they've got to have an opposition who then attack everything they do.
Yep.
Now, we see that at the federal and state level. In fact, what's happened over since Federation in Australia, of course, is that where you once had 150 members all doing different things and being independent, it took 3 months to form government. So the party system came about to sort of aid in that happening. So people would loosely gather, and out of that grew a number of parties, and the Labor Party probably the earliest of the lot. But if you come to local government, if you come to what I've taken on as my belief to run for the mayor, because I firstly love the independence of local government. Now, to answer that first question, I've not been Labor since I left politics, basically, as in the the federal seat. I stayed for a little while. Basically, I'd been a proud member of Parliament, but as a member of Parliament, I represented everyone. And I know that we'll probably talk about some of the people that support me on all sides of politics, that I was never, strangely enough, never in government touted as the Labor boy or the Labor guy, because I was quite different from all of them. I was a businessman who made a decision on some social justice issues that affected me personally going back to my teens, that Labor had at the time the solution. So for me, I became a Labor member of Parliament because when I talk about that two-party system, you've either got to be one or the other. You can't be other than be true independent. Independents in our state and federal system very rarely get elected. So me, look, and living in the city of Logan, it was about, well, what is it that we need for our region? So if you look at all of the things that I did previously when I was in government, but very rarely would you ever hear me standing on principle about the Labor government. So essentially, I left the Labor Party, formally resigned from the Labor Party 9 years ago, and can I say they weren't very happy with it, because party systems think that you're doing this for a reason. Why wouldn't you stick with the power? But I basically said that I wanted to be in local government because all the experiences I'd had in business and in government, and as you know, I've got multiple careers in different levels, and whether it's business or government. But to truly represent the people of a city, you can't have party politics. And so my Labor roots were really about the issues that I dealt with as a younger person, and I got it resolved, and I can talk about that later if you like, but had that resolved essentially by Labor governments at the time. So they sort of adopted me. And I won, as you know, a very conservative seat, won it convincingly. I think it was about a 14.5% swing, because people knew, even at that stage, that I was about the community. So I won seats or booths in the Cedar Ford that had never been won by a Labor government before. And that's because the people who elected me knew me. And that was seats like Bow Desert and Boona and like those essentially conservative areas. So to say that, the elephant in the room about being Labor, it's funny, it seems to be the one point that people want to have a go. They say, well, we can accuse him of being Labor, but you've heard it from me, that it's not about, and I'm not a member of party, haven't been for a long time, and I can tell you now that I have serious concerns about the existing governments that we have that are Labor.
I have concerns of all party governments, to be frank with you.
Well,
and so it's something I'm always concerned about, because it's sometimes the demand to pull the party line rather than stand up for conscience or to stand up to what we think is best. So, no, it's great to hear. And all your boards are yellow anyhow. There's I didn't see any red on them. So the other guy has red, whatever his linkings are.
Well,
that's all the best.
Yeah, and that's going to be, I mean, that's a fairly powerful force within parts of the city. So to run independent is always difficult, but there's no way in the world that I would run as any party aligned anything in the city, and I think it's not right. And there are, as you know, 4 current councillors, including my opponent, who do belong to a party. And they are already, even though they're not stating they're teaming, they're essentially teaming. I mean, it is happening. They're supporting each other. You see people like our federal member, Chalmers, and our state members, Power and others, De Brenny, basically writing letters supporting these guys. So I think that's probably what disappoints me most, that they all want to be independent. They state that they're independent. I just belong to a party, they say. Well, the reality is that makes them non-independent, without a doubt.
I agree. And does that make it easier? So if Labor in the state's in power, or if the LNP is in power, does your neutrality make it easier to work then?
Look, absolutely. And I can give you an example right now. Because we have, in this region, we have some of the safest federal and state seats, but it's not all the city. Now, I would go as far as to say that we have been disadvantaged by that, because we've been taken for granted. Essentially, if you look at what we are as a city, the size of our city, the lack of infrastructure, there's a whole lot of issues that I can talk about. Well, you would think that predominantly Labor, that we would be doing much better than we are. And so the reality is, it will, as an independent, I can deal with both sides, and I have done in many other dealings since I've been out of government. The reality is I can work with both sides, and I know, and I'm sure potentially there will be a change coming. And it's our ability. My opponent can't say the same thing.
No, and that's mean, I was born, raised. I know it doesn't sound like it, but I was born in the Mater Hospital, and and then when I was 2, my parents moved out to Logan Lee. So came up there. I was Kingston Primary School, Woodridge High School, Woodridge Scouts.
You're a real local. Sure.
Yeah, but I just don't talk like it. Okay, been all through that area, and I was in the States for several years, but I'm living back here. Well, I've been back here now for over 30 years. I live in Canubia.
Right.
So I have a real heart for our city and the feel of it, and we are very strong as a church. Like, we have our markets this Sunday, trying to. The whole idea is to bring out quality food. Not there's some places, and God bless them, they give out food which is best before date and everything's expired. I don't do that. Everything we have is like tomorrow at 6 a.m. I'll be at the markets, prison markets. We buy bananas, mangoes, grapes, cauliflowers, apples. And I buy premium. I don't buy out. I don't say, here's a box of throwing out the best, and we sell them. Or we just, like I showed you, we had the eggs.
Oh, that's impressive.
For $2 versus $5 to $6, because we're trying to say we want to make sure that the average person. And if we have families who say, I can't eat, then our pantry has non-perishable foods that we'll give out free charge. We work with the local police in the area, because it's amazing how many times they want food parcels to hand out. We work with the women of violence. So we do that area. So we know the city is hurting. So the thing that always gets the city is, I hear about all of these, save the environment. And of course, who doesn't want a better environment? It's a lot better today breathing than it was in the 80s. Okay,
that's right.
But the fact of the matter is that I look at the environment, but I see the cost. It was only this week where I was listening to the radio station about recycling and how I think it's the federal government has put a tax or a bill on them. It goes back to Morrison's time. I think it's like $4 or $5 a ton or a kilo. And these people said, we're going to put it right back onto the people. So as mayor, how much power do you have? And I know you can't do electricity and things like that, but how much power do you have to help reduce the cost of living in our city, which affects the local people?
Oh, look, it comes in many forms. And, the city of Logan is a big city, 5th largest in Australia, 3rd largest in Queensland, $1 billion budget. So the reality, it's a significant business. And when you consider that the waste, because any city council has to deal with waste, and it's usually through a contracted process. So if you're talking waste specifically, there's a lot of things that you can do there to start imposing. The easy fix is to impose charges on things, and councils tend to do that. The real issue, and if you look at my Facebook or even my website, I do talk about some of the economic drivers that we need to look at. Now, my background is economics in terms of my studies. I have a qualification in commerce. I roll that degree into education. So I have 2 education degrees. So for me, everything's got to make sense financially. And why I say, the budget of Logan, and why I believe making savings is where we can make rates less a problem. In other words, make them cheaper. You don't go backwards from a position depending on whether the organisation can save massive amounts of money. But in any business, as you know, Shaun, it's you either increase revenue, and in our case, we've got to increase revenue from sources other than ratepayers, or we cut costs. So there's a combination. I could probably talk for 2 hours alone on this very issue of what I might do, but the reality is I am very much driven by the financial and the economics of our city. And I'll give you one small example of this. And remember, I worked in council for 2 years. I was a senior manager. I ran a branch, media, marketing, community engagement. So this is back. I came out after federal parliament. I was getting offers then to do diplomatic service, but I figured what I wanted to do is basically get re-established in my own town or my own city and do things back in business. But council lured me in, and I spent 2 years there. And
was the mayor Pam Parker there?
And the mayor was Pam Parker.
We know Pam Parker.
Yeah, she was very encouraging for me to come on board. I guess because she understood what I understood about our city and getting back to the economics about how we could probably make a lot of savings. Now, if you look at a $1 billion budget, to say I'll say the officers in council who really run the organisation. The councillors are a board, and the mayor's job as a chairman is about to set the future and the vision with the board members being the councillors. But one challenge that I'm very keen to roll out is to our finance managers to say 5% saving on $1 billion budget is $50 million. Now you reapply that to either community infrastructure that we really need against those things that tend to be the sweetness for the public. We'll build a certain facility that we think is good and it gives us a headline. But the reality is we need to make the city more affordable first off. So our ratepayers feel that they're getting value for money. We are one of the highest charged ratepayers in southeast Queensland if you compare to everyone around us, and it's purely there's a number of reasons which I can talk about on another occasion about infrastructure charges and what state government's doing to us currently now. It's a big issue, but we start with making sure the budget works for us and that we're not just adding an extra cost because there's CPI or a few other costs that then our rates just continue to increase. So that's something I'm specifically inclined to look at when if I become the mayor, that'd be one of the first priorities.
I've heard mayors in the past say that they're going to freeze rates or lower rates. I have never seen them do it because when they're actually in power, I often ask, they're in power, but do they have the power? Because there's all these other advice. Like, let's talk, for example, since the state government did all of its firing and sacking and all those sort of things, they have more control, especially in Logan City and Ipswich, than they've ever had before.
Oh, of course.
How do you, as a mayor, survive as a mayor with all of these things? Some people think that the reason why this mayor right now is so quiet is because he's just a figurehead, that he has no power, that it all works through the state.
You know, hey, there's different ways of looking at that. In fact, the state government has put a whole level and a whole range of authority over local government because we exist. I said at the start of this interview about federal and state government being constitutional and they're in their own right. But local government in Queensland comes out of the state legislation. So it exists because state government allows us to exist.
Yes.
Because we're actually corporations. I mean, it's a board. It's registered under ASIC. We are the City of Logan, a business. Now, the mayor, and this is a good one, whether it's the current mayor and future mayors, it is about your ability to understand where you take the city because there's one vote for the mayor and 12 other votes being the councillors.
Yes.
It's actually putting a team together and anything can change. State government will listen to the direction that council want to take the council, but you have the strength in numbers. And so firstly, you've got to provide the leadership to make sure that the 12 councillors are working with you. And I've said to many councillors over the years about, where do they believe Logan's going? And they're part of an organisation. And largely they say, well, we all get our say about the things that we want and it's a good environment, but largely the officers run the business. And that's because Logan doesn't have a vision. Now,
yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. So 8 years ago, I put together again what I believe were the priorities, and pride in our city was one of those things.
Yeah,
and economic reforms, or essentially generating more business and more revenue to the city was a big part of that. So you get those things right, and you basically become less reliant on state government. Darren Power is a very honest man. He's been a councillor for a long time, and he had the ability to bring a new council together. There'd been the sackings, there'd been all of those things, but largely I don't think he had the energy to continue, and that's clear because he's not standing again. But look, a mayor can have an enormous amount of impact on what we do as a city, and then it's only a matter of then convincing state government of how they need to support us. Now, I often say to people, politics is a funny thing because politicians have a very low pain threshold. So the politicians, the state and federal members that we have in this region, if the public are reinvigorated, our ratepayers, through something the mayor says or does, and a good example has been Ipswich in the past in terms of when they went through a bit of a revolution. It is about the state government understanding that the council represents the people, and this is what we want. They've got to stand up and listen, because ultimately they won't be supported to continue in that role. So it is something. again, I could talk for 2 hours about what I can do and what I believe I can do, but it is about having that vision that we all agree. It's the narrative that takes Logan forward, and I've always had a narrative for Logan.
We need a mayor who is seen. Let me just say that. There are people in power who, personally, I don't really like. Okay? As a Christian, we love everybody, but they don't have to be my friends. So, but I don't believe in bagging them, and I believe in respecting the office. Okay? So let me say that. But I just haven't seen, and it's not just the mayor, our own councillors. Where are they? There's a sign down the street down here, and they've got to say, where is the councillor for this street? And everybody's asking, where are they? Where are they? I'm not seeing them. And some people are not being contested. Where are they? You know, I mean, I just don't see, we want to have a mayor. In that flooding we had just recently, now, love or hate Luke, when the flooding was on, he was everywhere, met the Prime Minister and doing it. Where are they? I'm sure the mayor turned up somewhere, but it was never anywhere here. I mean, this is the flooding we had in the area. Guess which council person came and visited us or saw us? None.
Wow.
Not a one. Not a local councillor, not a mayor, not a deputy mayor, not one. That's here. That's the back paddock. Not a single one came.
Wow.
Not a single one came and visited with us, said anything. Not one. And I'm not asking them to do any jobs. In fact, it's only because I rang up the local representative and asked them to help us with dumping stuff that they help there. But nobody, there's no incentive, there's no areas. And we're only one picture, we're not it. But that same report was everywhere in the midst of these things. And this is, people want to, they not only want an elected person, but they want to feel that they're going to be listened to. They're going to want to feel that they're going to get a response. Like if somebody emails your office, okay, what do you think is a fair time to respond? Or it may not be you directly, but your staff, but how long do you think it takes to respond?
Look, and depending on the urgency, but a 24-hour turnaround has to be just part of what the business does. I mean, if there's urgencies, I mean, if it's to do with something or a facility or a problem that they can talk to others in council. But when it comes down to issues like flooding or the representation of a councillor or a mayor, you've got to be visible and you've got to be obvious to people. And I think part of the problem has been the history of Logan and the dismissals, that we lost a lot of corporate knowledge. And a lot of people who'd been councillors understood how to engage the public. If you look at people like Graham Abel, who you can talk to Graham Abel about,
I knew Graham,
about Betty Brown, and he'll tell you where she lived, who her family were, where they'd gone with. And so we had councillors that were well engaged. Interesting enough that I think...
And that was Pam Parker's strength. Love her or hate her.
Pam,
she had the ear down this street where we are here. Everybody knew Pam Parker.
Pam was an amazing person when it came to community, and she used to talk about that stuff. And that's the sort of councillor we want. And those sorts of councillors don't necessarily make good mayors, which is interesting. It is that overall representation you have divisionally. It's about the mayor's ability to have his own personality, his or her own personality to go and do what they've got to do. But if it comes down to representation and being seen, I think somewhere along the line we've lost the understanding of the importance of local government. It's the one level of government that people engage with every day.
That's exactly
Everything
right.
we do.
Yeah,
and
it's grassroots.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we have, congratulations to those 5 councillors who are unopposed. But the reality is, you've got to have a competition. People have to have choice and have to know. And if that's part of the process, then you know what? A councillor is going to be seen and they're going to be heard. One thing I know very well about Pam, that while she was committed to the community, she was well aware that she had to prove her ability at the next election. And she did it well. I mean, there was no... I mean, in times of campaigning, you call it continuous campaigning. It's something you do every week with a view that I need to do this, I need to do it right, I need to be seen, and I need to communicate because I need these people to re-elect me. Somewhere along the line, we've lost that in council. We've actually lost that. And I think, look, if I was the mayor, I mean, because I've sort of grown up politically in that space, you've got to be seen, you've got to be part of it.
You would experience that from your federal area.
Absolutely. And you in times when I was involved... people saw me everywhere.
Yeah.
I'd, even karaoke occasionally.
Yeah.
Like there were things that you had to do to prove that you were with people. You were doing things with them. And I think if I'm mayor, I think it is about the vision that we have, the narrative that we have, that will be engaging the community. I mean, I will make it clear to councillors that you've got to do things with your community, and we will basically encourage a whole range of things. But it also comes down to what we can put back into the communities if we have financial ability. I mean, that we can do a whole range of things to get the community engaged, and the local councillor has to be leading that charge. Now, that said, there are some very, very good councillors in Logan right now. There's some very good ones.
Who?
Well, I can. Do you want to know directly?
Tell me someone.
Okay, well, we've got Natalie Wilcox down in Division 11.
What suburb is that?
Well, that's Flagstone, so a long way from here.
Yeah.
Yes, I was
Good for
just
her.
thinking as I said that, you've almost got the east and then the west and the southwest.
Of course you have.
But you've got, without going through them all, it'll take too much time, but you've got some really good councillors who are committed, and largely they are ones who are unopposed. However, I've heard more recently that people are saying, well, we don't know who our councillor is, and we believe that they don't have an opponent, and because we've not seen them. And I think there's a problem, and I don't even know what that is causing it just yet, but I think it's simply because people have lost an understanding of the importance of engaging their local councillor.
They're not being trained or worked. I think with respect to the current mayor and they're going to follow the leadership, in my opinion. If the leadership says, well, I'm in my office or whatever, I'm sure the man's busy. But see, I have pastors here. And I say to the pastors, don't go over there photocopying. We've got great people here who do photocopying. I want you outside. If I find you photocopying, when I got people here who can photocopy, we have an issue. I'm paying you to be out with the people.
Yes.
And then the others will do the areas, like in the police. Police should not be administrators.
That's right.
Police should be out there. Hire those administration.
That's
and
right.
the same thing happens in politics, is that we need to have people who are out there. And, Pam Parker, I trip over her every week at the Hyperdome.
Oh, do you?
Not now.
Oh, you did, yes.
She doesn't live here now.
No, that's right.
I haven't seen her to hear her. Okay. But in her time, I would trip her every week. She'd be at the coffee club or whatever here. Not just having a meeting with people and community people and sharing. And with Luke, I would see him and I'd trip over him, you know what I mean? Because he's gone through a challenging time. That's another story. But the fact is, I'd see them there. And that to me was the thing, is that you have to be seen. You have to give the idea that you're seen. I mean, it's the same thing for me as a pastor. I have to be. People think the pulpit is the thing. The pulpit's 10% of my week. It's with people and listening to their hearts and listening to their cries, or working with up and comings. And I was introduced to some of our young people in here that we're working with and developing, and it's getting that whole thing going. And I really feel it has affected the heart of our city. That we've had like 4 years where the last elections was pretty tough.
Yes.
And the one before that was pretty dirty. Okay. And I experienced a lot of flack from a particular party that still has things on us.
Really?
Yes. And because they didn't like us. But the fact of the matter is that it's got to be what works for the people.
Yes.
And I think that a public, being able to be seen, to be listened to is a real key.
Look, I think to some degree, in defence of some of the councils, I mean, the state government laws have changed, or the rules have changed quite significantly. And I think they're, again, with a less experienced council or councillors, that I think they're a little bit scared in some ways to do things.
I think that's true.
And I think, that takes, I guess, the leadership, and that's what the mayor comes with experience, not necessarily in council, because that's not the experience you need. You need to be able to run a business, form a team, lead a team, and be there to support the team. And at the same time, protect the city and protect the councillors as part of that. I think that's largely what's missing, because I think a lot of the state government legislation now, they've got to be careful who they meet with. If they can't attend certain meetings on their own. I mean, once upon a time, whether it was Pam or anyone else, Pam could go and talk to anyone she needed to. Now there's certain requirements. So I think it's how we find the balance that councillors should be fearless They should be absolutely fearless.
I like that. Fearless,
as a federal member, I had a whole lot of certain privileges that allow me to stand up in Parliament and talk about anything I needed to talk about without fear of being sued.
Yeah.
Now, councillors don't have that protection. And I think it's how we as an organisation, as council, work within the constraints that we work, but give and empower these councillors to get out and do their job and be supported by the mayor. Because at the end of the day, even if it takes some sort of legal understanding of how we protect our councils, then as a mayor, I'd be very, very happy to be able to do that. Because I think a team can only work as a team if they feel safe, like in any organisation.
I agree. I think that as the mayor, because you've got people skills, one of the first things should be 101 course on how to talk to people, or how to get seen. Because where are they?
Yes.
I mean, previously they were there, but I think a lot of well-meaning people came in. They had the right idea when it came to election. They're out there touching flesh, meaning it. But then the minute they got elected, it's like, forget about it. And that's what angers the average person.
Look, and you're right. In fact, I just now reflect on something when I think about it. One of the councillors who's just completed their first term, and a good councillor, who basically said that their first briefing with the officers of council, telling them about their legal, basically the liability, and their obligations. That this person, who was a very experienced community person, come away said, if anyone else heard that, they would really consider whether they'd ever run for council. And I think in those very words, it's almost what's happened, that there's this fear, because if the organisation, even if the officers of the organisation can't ensure that the councillors feel safe, well, it comes down to the mayor to do that. It is about the team.
Well, this is why going back and not trying to sound terrible about it, because it might come across that way, but when we had that stabbing in Red Bank of the grandmother,
yes,
and we had our program, and I said, look, there's so many people responsible here, and we can talk all we want about the magistrates, who I think are making terrible rulings, but they're only doing what they got. It's Parliament's got to change the rules and tell the magistrate what happens. And I also had a little go towards the police commissioner, unawares that she'd be removed 2 weeks later, saying she's not there by the police ranks. She is parliamentary elected. She's got to put her face in the face of the government defending those police and saying we need to get changed. And it wasn't happening. Regrettable to what happened. It wasn't happening. Yeah. And it's the same thing with the mayor. The mayor has to have their face in the face of saying we have got to be people conscious. We've got to be there. Now, I don't take grants, never have, but I do know people in my area here, or those who are running, said we were told as long as we give them their grants that they have each year, then they'll support us in the area. And so they go to each area. This is in my area. Okay, they go to the areas. Now, I don't get grants, don't want grants. Our people are generous people, and we do what we do. Never have, never will. You'll never see me ask you for grants. You'll never see me want to ask for money from the mayor's Christmas fund thing, helping out. And I'm not against others that do it. I'll never do it. We do it all ourselves. Okay. But the fact of the matter is they were saying, as long as we go around to that sports club, this club here, this doctor, and they give their $500, $1,000, I'll pay for your fireworks to go out to your Christmas thing here and there. They're all happy. But surely we've got to have more guts than that. And it's going to be more than just a handout. And I know every, what do you call them, the local elected person has a budget to how much they can give out. I know how it's there. But the fact of the matter is there's got to be something deeper, more meaningful. Like, for example, I remember a couple of years back, right, Ed? We had a 75-year-old lady sleeping in the tent at the back here.
Wow.
And when that flood came, her tent got destroyed. So I had a boat, we're going in the back. And she's just over in the back bush over here.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So we bought her a new tent and helped her with food and everything else. And I rang up council, help me to help her. I'm not asking you to do anything. Help me to help her.
Yes.
And they said, well, what do you want to do? I said, allow me to do something temporary to have her put in. No. No. So they sent people out to say, move on to her.
Oh, really?
No. Now, this is what irritates me. I wasn't asking for money. I wasn't asking anything. I said, I have the means. I got some areas of land there. Let me just put in a temporary thing, a demand of something in the area just to put this woman. Now, without a doubt, she's on the street part of it because that's what she's chose to do. So I'm not stupid, right? But just the not even, I said, well, you meet with me. No. So these are the things where I find it inhumane.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not asking them to pay any money. I'm asking them not to give me a ticket is what I'm asking.
Yeah.
So I can do something temporarily, 3 months, 6 months. No. So this is where we miss the grassroots, because housing is a problem.
Yes.
We have somebody else on the other side up here, the Energex, they're homeless.
Right.
Okay. It's drug related.
Well, yeah.
And please involve that area there, so things there. But I can just tell you around this whole area, I can tell you all areas of people, and it's getting worse, not better. And there are people who want to try and do temporary things to help.
Yes.
But everything is like, no, there's no grace. There's no help us to do something. I'm not asking for money. I'm just saying so you don't come and find me.
Yes. Yeah.
They said, no, we'll find you. So that's the walls that we hit. So let me ask this then. In our climate of housing is just horrendous.
Yes.
And I know you know that because you're out in the street meeting people.
Yes.
So in the council, one of the things if I've got it correct, Logan City was one of the first ones to allow blocks to have other housings done. Because Brisbane City's copying it. But the fees, it's like $50,000 now to come across. And it's like, for what? I mean, like, do we really think there's a housing problem or not for just a temporary thing to review or what, or to look into? I mean, are you pro-development or anti-development?
Well, I'm actually very pro-development. Okay. Absolutely. But
because currently it comes across as anti.
Oh, does it?
Well, and all the time development want to be done down in my area, that particular person did all the protests, everything else, block.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So,
and so as a city, you're saying that as a city, we're looking, you believe.
Well, I can just say the current mayor has come across as anti-development in housing.
Right, yes.
Because block, and all the areas down here of Bryant's Road, everywhere else, block. It's a big thing. And I don't know any developers who are singing the praises saying it's easy. Okay? So what I'm asking is, when I say pro-developer, I'm not talking about to where there's special deals or things, God forbid.
I know what you're saying.
But helping to allow us to work out some way to help people and do things.
In fact, probably the best way is a little bit of my history. When, again, the federal parliament, and I don't know if you recall, but prior to being in federal parliament, I was an advisor to the state minister, Desley Boyle, who's local government and planning. So my role in those days was to get out to local councils, talk to the mayors and the deputies and the councillors where it was required about the process of running council and about planning and about development and the benefits of development if you do it the right way. So that first answer, yes, I am pro-development, but it's got to be responsible and it's got to fit within the requirements of what we expect as a community.
Sure.
Now, you know, as you know, this state government are really anti funding to campaigns when it involves developers. And I get the rules and I understand what they're concerned about. The reality is, if you know a developer or know developers, they take enormous risk. They take enormous risk. And what they do, as a councillor, as a mayor, we need to respect them because they're the ones that build the future. They're the ones that...
It's your rates.
That's right. And so that's the future growth. The irony right now is state government are imposing some infrastructure charges on. Again, we probably don't have enough time in this program to talk about it, but this is going to be a large issue we're going to have to deal with if I become the mayor. It's emerging right now and it will require us to build infrastructure before the developers arrive, which is going to hit our budget severely. Now, when we talk about developers, I know as a federal member that there was a process. When a developer wants to go in and maybe cut up some land to do some housing development, which is generally what it is, they need to get tick-offs from state, from federal, council, go through the planning process. But as a federal member, and there's a couple of major developments that were happening at the time, and I said to them, well, I'll give the tick-off if you provide, in one instance, it was a bus service for 2 years to connect it to the... And they said, not a problem. Not a problem. Because developers put a big risk. They have a big risk. They will put money on the table and they'll do things knowing that if this is what it's required to get a development out the other end, they're going to do it. And the thing that I find really strange is that we've got a number of developments that have occurred in recent years. The roads aren't wide enough. There's not enough off-street parking. There's no connection to public transport. They're really poor developments.
Yarrabilba.
And Yarrabilba. And the irony is that council can condition anything they want. So somewhere there's been slippage. Somewhere there's been a lot of slippage. Now, and on the reverse side of it, the planning hasn't been up to scratch. They haven't conditioned developers. And I'm telling you, developers will do what they have to do to get a development through. Yeah. And yet they turn around to the mums and dads and go, oh, you want to put a granny flat on? In fact, Logan is one of the only cities at the moment where they're now requiring a $22,000 fee to get approval for a granny flat.
Oh my goodness.
It's outrageous. Now, when the state government have impressed on us that we as a city have to
increase,
have to respond, and yet council locally and dare I say, my opponent chairs that committee that have actually recently applied a $22,000, and it's a scale, 22 to 35, depending on what you want to do. So I've said emergent results in emergent times, and as a council, we can make decisions at any time, use our discretion to remove fees. Yeah. Now, I've said what I will do, and that's with the support of the rest of the council, because I'm sure the other councils will agree, that if we've got an emergency, if we've got to find and provide more housing, then we put a moratorium on charging those fees for 12 months.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Another
6 months, 12 months.
Yes, just review it. Now,
it's common sense.
Absolutely. So when you talk about this council and maybe not having performed, as I said, I give them some leeway because there's a lack of experience with a number of the councils. They've just had their one term, but surely it's got to be now a time that the right mayor, the right leadership, to say to these councillors, we can do any of these things that we require. We can do anything. Now, it's a financial impost one way or another. But my concern has been, when I talked earlier about financial management, when I've analysed this budget, and I can tell you where there are lots of holes, and I can tell you where the excesses are. The reality is that where the council have been increasing fees and charges in other areas, including animal management, including a whole lot, simply to make up the discrepancy in the budget. And so largely this $22,000, which is an auxiliary, granny flat, whatever you want to call it, has now been imposed, and people are outraged.
Yes.
And Logan City has some of the most available land space, greenfield and infill, but we're not encouraging people on acreage where, now I don't believe that we want to create shanty towns.
No, God forbid. No.
Rules can be quite precise about, and any developers, and I know there's a number of exceptionally good developers in this town would be going, this is music to my ears, because they can help. We have the expertise in the city. We have the people who want to invest, and there's been developers over the years who are still here doing developments. They could have been in any other part of Queensland, not playing with the same sort of rules that Logan has required. But I'll preface all that in saying we do need to have responsible development. We just can't develop out of control, and we're cutting up a lot of greenfield area now where infill is the most obvious. We've got the infrastructure in place. We've got the roads, and they might need to be expanded because there's more traffic. But we have sewage, we have water, we have electrical, or the Energex stuff. I mean, it's already there. So it is, again, it's not a one fixed solution. There's a whole range of things that have to happen. But someone's got to start the dialogue, and someone's got to have the discussion, and with state government, about how are they going to help us with the housing crisis, because somehow along the line it looks like they've shifted it.
Yeah, of course they will. They'll do a pass. Yeah, I mean, it's the same as we're building in the bag, and we've been. Why taking so long? Because we do it cash. Yes. I don't carry debt, so I do it cash. So cash comes, and we're doing stuff. It took us 18 months to go through with Energex just to get the connections through. Wow. 18 months.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And then we had the scare that with the new roads coming through, I know some lawyer who used to work with the main roads quit and had inside information and contacted us and all others saying, hey, they're going to resume your property. Can I represent you? And they're like, huh? I mean, how did that get out? And so we contacted consultants in the area. Consultant, just having a conversation. There's 10 grand.
Yeah,
okay.
That's right.
And talking to them, and they want to lift the flood level. Well, can you put that flood picture back up for me, please? okay, this is our underground basement, okay, down under here where the roller door is. They're saying now they want to lift the flood level to over where our floor is, and then all of a sudden our floor has to be... How do you lift a 1 acre of concrete, okay, 300 mils and pre-existing? Because we're trying to do our hydraulic reports right now.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's what we're going through. That's $50,000 I have to pay through my consultants for the hydraulic reports.
Yeah. Yep.
Because council is trying to suggest to put through flood things. I tell you, how are you going to handle the flood situation, all these new zones and heights and things?
Yes, yeah. Look, in fact, I need to probably give you a little bit of history with this, and this goes back to 2011. If you remember 2010, at Christmas time, late December, we had a small flood. By 2011, they had the deluge that came down from Toowoomba and pretty much devastated the Lockyer, came through Brisbane. Now, in immediate response, and I was working in council at that time, the immediate response by state government at the time, because they were looking at, there was all sorts of litigation that was being floated around because of the dam issue, if you remember.
Yeah, I remember that.
Which is all rolled out since then, and we know and understand that the Wivenhoe was almost full of water when it should have been. It was there as a...
Should have been dropped.
Should have been dropped. Yeah. And so, interesting enough, there was an edict that came down from state government. I was working in council at the moment. I know because we had to organise the media around this in terms of our response as a council, how we would let the public know. And what it was is the state government had basically required all councils to complete flood mapping, and it was a very short time frame because politically they were under pressure. So Logan Council basically worked off a digital plan, which in those days was pretty good because up until that they had to basically proof every property to work out flood levels, but they were able to apply, I guess, a model over the top of what they had. But they then decided to make it 600 above what was modelled. And then I think it went to 1,200. They brought it back to 600. But the levels were always higher than they should be. Now, I live on the river. I still live on the river. And at that point in time, people now being affected by insurance, I lived on the river at the time. They were going to put it up that amount. Our insurance premiums immediately, I'm talking 13 years ago now. But we resolved that, talked to the insurance companies, had a whole conversation about, well, we can prove and we're able to prove the actual levels. Unfortunately, every property in Logan can't get around and say, well, I'm not going to pay that insurance premium because it's too high. What happened in 2017, April the 1st, and then happened in 2022 was, again, the levels came a little bit higher, so they've plonked another 600 on top of it. So from a council's perspective, you can understand, well, it's about limiting their liability against someone saying, well, you allowed me to build in a floodplain. These heights now will never be achieved. Like the talk, they were a 1 in 150, then a 1 in 100, and they're talking about a 1 in 500. Now, they don't actually relate to the years. It's a percentage. 1 in 100 is a 1% chance. 1 in 500 is a point whatever chance. But they've stuck with those levels. And what I'm saying is the 2011 levels were wrong. That's where the problem started, and they've never gone back to review those. So they play them up. They play them down, and properties like yours will be immediately affected. That's as a large plot. Individual land, and I know there's quirks in the system because we had a family, family we knew in Eden's Landing, up high, got a letter to say that you're now affected by flood heights, and then they got a letter from the insurance. So the insurance companies aren't to blame. They're just responding to their responsibilities. And there's all sorts of talk about marching on the insurance, on the insurance companies and saying, we demand that you review your rates. Well, it's actually not their problem. It actually stems from, firstly, state government and then state government's response. So that was a long answer to a short question.
But it's relative to us.
My view is that this is something we seriously have to consider and look, and we have to ground truth. Ultimately, it's a very, very expensive process, but if we've got to ground truth certain areas or certain suburbs to say, well, this is what we see on the maps, but the reality is they're down here. Now, you said you grew up in Logan Lee, was it?
Yeah, I was there in the 74 floods.
Well, yes, and you'll remember then Station Road. Now, the flood heights they have on Station Road would essentially affect every property in that street. The current flood height now, compared to what the reality, even in 2022, it slightly crossed the road there near there's that big drainway that comes through the city. So we know just by experience, in a flood level, 2022 was very high for the Logan River. It was almost the highest they'd ever recorded.
Yes.
And that road still wasn't affected, but the flood heights were at least 1,200 above.
Yeah.
So therein lies the problem. It's never been ground truth. It's all the digital mapping. And they're no doubt getting better and better and better at how they do that. But that's got to be something that has to seriously be considered. Now, and I think that the state government are pretty much going, well, insurances, well, that's what the insurance companies have to do. But they're driven by the actual local information produced by council.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. Just as, look, there's so many things we could talk about, but time has gotten away. So let me just ask this. Are you a Christian?
Absolutely.
Okay. So where do you go to church?
Well, St. Mark's, Daisy Hill. I'm an Anglican, so traditional Christian. Grew up. I was an altar boy. Did all the right things as a child. Confirmed and the whole thing. And my wife. My wife is Catholic, and that's an interesting. She comes from a Spanish family, so it's an interesting blend.
Is she Spanish?
She was born in Australia, but her parents are Spanish. Yeah. Her first language until she was at school age was Spanish.
Very good.
And yet to talk to her, you'd think she has been an Aussie all of her life, but has no accent, but speaks fluently.
Unlike me. So where were you raised? You said you were in Logan?
Yeah, well, no, I was raised in Salisbury. So I went to Salisbury High School.
Little grey uniforms, the red stripe on the sleeves sort of thing. Yeah.
And there's
we Woodridge boys didn't like you guys.
No, look, and I used to play sport against you guys.
I'm sure you did.
What you had down there was a really good theatre course, or a few theatre teachers were really
What year are you born?
I'm 1960.
Oh, I'm a 62 model. Okay, so we're not too far apart.
You would have been there. I would have been.
One of the older ones there.
Yeah, but I went off the track there. What were we talking about?
School where you were raised, Salisbury.
Yeah, Salisbury. I was, and as you know, Logan was named. So 1978, they gazetted Logan as a new city to be named.
Yes.
And I remember standing in Springwood because it was part of Brisbane then.
Yes.
And it was a, goodness knows, a Monday or Tuesday, and it was a news service saying, we finally worked out the new name for the new city, and it's going to be Logan. Because they were talking about Mount Lindsay, they were talking about all these things. So the new city was born, and it was a much smaller city then, of course, 200 square kilometres. But I distinctly remember, so I then probably by the time I'm in my early 20s, I'd moved and built out in Cedar Vale, which is now Logan City. So when you talk about my association with the city, it probably goes back 42 years or whatever, having been in what is now Logan. Yeah. And Logan Village, I was in Logan Village for a while, but Logan Village is actually now the centre of the actual geographical centre of Logan, to give you an idea of how big we are.
Yes, it's a big city.
It's now 1,000 square kilometres.
Logan is also wealthy. Now, let me tell you, when I say wealthy, Logan City Council is one of the wealthiest, I know this, and it's not said, it's one of the wealthiest councils in Australia. One of the wealthiest in its finances. And that's why I always say they could do with being a little bit more gracious. I can see you smiling, but I know it's true. They could do with being a little bit more gracious to its people when saying there. But then Logan, we lived in Logan Lane. Yeah. So at one point it was Bethesda.
That's right.
At one point it was Albert and Logan.
That's right.
And then it was Logan.
That's right.
So there's been so many different cuts and pastes. And then Beenleigh was Gold Coast. And then Beenleigh was back into Logan City. And then they took over at Jimboomba Way. And Jimboomba was Bethesda. Boy, there's been so many cut and pastes.
Yeah. Well,
it's a big city.
Well, some people they've lived in the same house for 40 years and they've lived in 3 different cities. So.
Well, my parents at Logan Lee, they lost all their house plans because there was a big fire years back in the 70s in the Bethesda Council, and all the plans got destroyed. Yeah. Of course, there was nothing digital, so everything went poof.
Yes, and I've heard that many times. Sometimes they say it's a flood, and other times they say it's a fire.
Yeah,
it might be
convenient.
Maybe the filing was just pretty poor.
Yeah, but the Logan people are pretty. Sometimes they get a bit of a bum rap. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they do. You live out in Slacks Creek,
Slacks Creek.
Yeah, Slacks Creek.
Woodridge Station.
He's been in our church since he was a little fella.
Oh, has he?
Were you ever a little fella? But anyhow, I was a little fella.
Yeah, I came out 6 foot, yeah.
So he's been with us all the way through, and great blessing to us and the team. But, Logan, of people of resilience, and they've got something to offer. And you know, I'm really wanting a mayor, which I believe isn't you, okay, who can really say, hey, we're not just a spot on the highway that you drive past, whether it be the Olympics, whether it be whatever else. We have something to contribute. And I know they think of Brisbane, Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast. But I really believe there's something here. I mean, I'd love the Hyperdome to do a rebuild, okay? But the fact of the matter is, I'd really love to, you know, to understand that we have something, you know, and something to offer as a city. And we're not just to drive past the highway, but we have something that says stop or pull in or experience.
Look, in fact,
our city.
You'd remember because you're a Logan boy as well. I mean, you'd remember when the Hyperdome was a lion park.
Yeah,
like that's, you know,
Ashton's Lion Park.
Yes,
not to be confused with Bullens down at Yatala.
Absolutely.
With the wigwam in front.
That's exactly right. And they were there for years. They were there for years, and then they had the big water park. Remember
the
that?
spout that looked like it was pouring down.
Yep.
I brought the youth there to go down there.
See, I'm getting excited.
That's right. I love that.
So the reality is now, Pam Park would probably smile tell this story when she first became mayor, and I was the federal member at the time, and I helped her on the campaign because I believe she was the right one. It was the new Logan. It's just taken on all this extra, gone from 200 square kilometres to 1,000. Right.
Wow.
So we were at a function down in Mount Warren Park, as a golf course, right? And Paul Basali was coming over. Now, when I was an advisor, as I said to Desley, I'd had a lot of time with Paul, and Paul knew where he wanted to go with the city. A man who was very animated, but very clever, very clever behind it. So Pam was somewhat rattled by and she'll tell you this story. We were sitting listening to Paul was coming to make a presentation. It was like a Chamber of Commerce thing. And she said to me, and I was the federal member then, I'm sitting there with Pam, and she said, you know, Paul, look, we know, you know, the city of, it's half our size, and I'm saying, Pam, look, I know your frustration, but think about this. And I got the old serviette, you know, with the pen. I said, Pam, just relax for a minute. Here is Logan. I put it in the middle. I said, there's Redlands, there's Brisbane, there's Gold Coast, and I drew a line with an arrow with, you know, there's Ipswich somewhere out there in the west, you know. And I said, now, and you'll remember these words. I said, Pam, we are the heart of southeast Queensland. And Pam looks at me and goes, you know, because Pam was always about the marketing.
That's right.
And, you know, it became we're the heart of southeast Queensland. So she got that really quickly, and I think that was something that, and I'd still like to leverage on that, other than we're the heart for a number of reasons. You know, we have all of the facilities, but when you look at the road network, the rail network, when you look at our access to the regions and the land that we have, we truly are the centre of southeast Queensland. We truly have to understand and have pride in our city. We're a city with 70 suburbs, and we've got 3 or 4 that have a few issues, but we've got 70 suburbs. And you say there's some amazing housing and some amazing developments, but people are let down by a number of things. And I've often talked about our history is really important. So I'm a bit of a history buff, as you probably know, and I've been known to dress up as Captain Logan and climb the banks of the Logan River saying, here I am. I've done all of these because if people understood the history, we are the very first free settlement outside of Brisbane. The very first. So in 1863, there were some blocks of land sold. One at the moment is still occupied by the Logan Village Hotel. That was the very first free settlement outside of Brisbane. And from that, we've grown to what we are now. There were farmlands and a whole range of things. And Captain Logan was part of that. That's another 2-hour conversation. So if people understood who we are, where we come from, and the people of Logan are very resilient. We talked about Salisbury High and Woodridge. Well, you know what? There's a lot of us living in the city. We are Logan. We are Logan today. And the fact that Brisbane, Gold Coast, Ipswich, Redlands, people have to remember, we're in competition with them. They're never going to say anything nice about us, would they? And the fact that we get a bit of a bad rap is because it comes from outside the city.
That's right.
And the number of people that say to me, you know, well, I never tell people that I'm in Logan. I think, why not? So for me as a mayor, you talk about the narrative. This is about making us proud to be people from Logan because of all of those things. But that's something, again, a mayor has to start. Now, can I say something quite controversial? Not if I haven't already. But the reality is, council is a big employer. We have 2,000 people in council, right? And the the 65% of those people, now they're professionals and they're very good people, there's no doubt about this. But the way we recruit is a little bit odd. 65% of those people don't live in the city.
Wow.
So when you talk about homelessness, people being whatever, and someone in council says, oh, well, I'm going to come and fine you, because they can leave the city. This is controversial, I know. They can leave the city at the end of the day and go, well, that's Logan's problem. Now, that's not saying there's anything wrong with these people or their employment, but because the senior management are not in Logan, you know yourself, if you're employing or you'll tap into your networks, we do, people that we trust, people that we know. In the case of Logan, because the senior managers have come from Gold Coast or Redlands or somewhere else, they'll tap into the network. I need a really good person who understands underwater knitting. So I'm going to get an underwater knitting specialist from Ipswich. So you'll bring them in, not a problem. But there is nothing, the other side of that is, yes, people who want to come, we are a preferred employer. The fact that we have so many people from outside is they want to work here. That's a big plus. All we have to do when we interview them, say, well, now you've got the right sort of skills. If you want to work in Logan, like, when are you going to move to Logan? Because we can help you with that. You know,
are you allowed to do that?
Of course, because it's about if there's incentives. You know, like if you move from here to Canberra, you know, they have to give incentives to. You know, if you move to Gold Coast, I mean, any employer can give an incentive. There is a way of doing that as part of your employment agreement. It's all part of the contract. But if you consider that over time, now those people who choose to live elsewhere, that's fine. I don't have an issue. But my point is that the more we can provide employment and professional employment in an organisation that is very, very professional, like there's some very high standards in council, but we've got all those professionals in Logan. We have 60,000 people a day drive out of the city to work somewhere else.
Yeah,
because they could be working here. So I think all I'm saying is that pride in our city starts from a very low base, and it is a case of individuals understanding who we are, but it's even the people that work in council that engage, and when they have to deal with a homelessness issue, actually understands what's happening and have the passion.
Going back to the point, if you asked me about Ipswich, if I was to tell you what I think the best coup Ipswich ever had, this is my opinion.
Yeah.
What's that suburb called just out there?
Springfield.
Springfield.
Yes.
All the infrastructure, the motorway, the railway. And if I was to compare it to Yarraboola, which was a state city, it's still under state control. It hasn't been given back to your city yet.
That's right. PDA.
And it is such a difficulty. And I said this to Luke, there's an old railway line that runs down there. I don't know if you've ever seen it. There's an old railway line. What would have it taken to put a tram in, like they have the Gold Coast, just to run a tram from Yarraboola, stopping Logan Village, and just going to Bethania or something, just to ease the good job? I mean, it costs money, but I'm not, or monorail, something, a tram, I'm not talking about a full tram, but something that just goes up, back to eliminate traffic. And they build these double lanes in the middle of nowhere to a bottleneck on the other. I mean, it does, because we have a church, really a church out there in Yarraboola doing a great job, Peter and Mel, and we have all those things. It is such a hideous thing, and there's so many simple things that could be done, because I talked to Luke about this, like a private investor to go across. And I know that city is a state city, same as out the Desert Way, but there's just doesn't seem to be any thought, and that's what I see that works so well for Ipswich. Is whatever you say, I think that town is their flag area. The shopping centre, the water stuff, the kids, it's a central part. The hospitals they got in there, the martyrs out there, that's so good. But we should have had that. We lost Costco. We had Costco lined up.
You can see I'm eager to respond.
Look, please.
Maha Sinnathamby is the one that built Springfield. Now, Maha came from Western Australia. He was a very successful planner who had a development over there that didn't go so bad, economic downturn. So he gathered himself, thought, well, where can I go to an area that can be supported by a major city? And he came to Queensland. He looked at the areas, Logan, Ipswich, Brisbane, and that large area which was Wacol or the back of Carroll Park, all those, and he said, this is where I'm going to build a city. He was a very experienced planner. Like Maha today is about 90 years of age. He's an amazing man, but he conceived the plan. Now guess what? This may shock you. He came to Logan first. He came to Logan first. And the difference is that even prior to Paul Pasali in Ipswich, they had a desire to attract business investment, and he floated this plan, and ultimately Ipswich and then Paul Pasali drove it and drove it and drove it. State government wanted to drive it because they needed that opening up some land in between those two cities, because Maha promised to build certain infrastructure, which he did. And the fact that at the end of it, they've now put the railway line in, that came as part of what was a 20-year plan, that he had the undertaking from state government up front that they would do that once he did a certain amount. And he ticked every box and did everything he needed to do. And it's why it's such a successful development, but it could have been part of Logan. It could have been part of Logan.
I hate hearing what could have been.
Yeah, well, and that's why, like the Costco.
Costco would have been great as a draw card coming
They came here first.
I know, they know. And we lost
Asahi.
it, and all that things heated and people being against stuff being done. Oh, well, anyhow, because that's where that new motorway is going at the back end. So they wanted that land anyhow that Costco was going through. So that was the state government doing a Barney 5 on us, shooting the foot. So we see that. Time has gone. It's 10 past the hour. It is an absolute. You've been with us for an hour.
Truly, we just got started.
There's so much we could talk.
I'm still working with that friend.
So what do you want to close with as closing words about your election? So we want to vote one, Brett Raguse.
Yeah, look,
and I'm supporting you 100%. We're going to work at a booth, near the church here. Ed and I are taking the first shift of 8 to 10.
Yep.
Darren Watts is going to be the captain, and so we got that all worked out. So we're excited for that.
Yep.
So what do you want to say? In particular, our audience is conservative Christians.
Yes.
What do you, Mr. Brett Raguse, want to say to them about this city election?
Look, it's one of those elections, and I've been saying since 2016, and I know the competition that I've had over the years, people with different views and how they may be supported. And some of the things we discussed today about people that had a particular view about my politics, the reality is I'm independent. The reality is I'm Logan. I'm passionate about Logan. I've been here 42 years in what we now understand Logan to be. I've been a federal member. I've been a high-level government operative. I've been in public service. In other words, I've been a council officer, a senior manager in council. There's not too many things that I don't know about running a city. I've run large businesses, and I still am in business today. And the good thing for me is that I've got family who are now, my kids are taken on, and it's given me a little bit more time, probably even to run this campaign. So what I believe I can bring to Logan, and what I promise I will bring to Logan, is firstly a narrative that makes us all feel very good about who we are, where we're going. You will very, very quickly see a succession plan in place. So it won't be, as we've been confronted in the last couple of elections, where there's no obvious sign of who the next person may be. You'll know within a year or 2 years, because my intention is if I win mayor, I will do at least 2 terms. Yep. I believe that 2 terms as a councillor, in fact, in any government role, it's time for change.
Yes.
So I committed in 2016 to do only 8 years. The funny thing is now I'm starting probably where I would have otherwise been finishing. But my commitment is...
we need you.
Yeah, my commitment is the same. I'm passionate about Logan, and can I say to people just to have faith that, that... I have never been a person. I always talk about being better, not bitter. There's lots of things that have been, said about me and alleged and name calling. I've never responded because I didn't want to give people an understanding that it even affected the way I thought.
Yes.
I've been, as you know, and you've known me a long time now, I've been always travelling in that same direction about the city, the people, and how we support each other.
Yes, no, I think it's great, and I am supportive. I'm supporting you, so it comes in an area there. I have 2 choices. And I've known you for a number of years. And from the last election, I liked you. Back then, I get to know you and communicating. And I was excited. I was really saying, dear Lord, what? Because at that point, it's saying unopposed running. And I was like, no, we need competition. And I was running from my own area trying to find people. And then it was only you'd rang the office, but something happened, it wasn't passed on, and I was asking, and the girl said, there was this gentleman, Brett Raguse, rang you, and I rang you out, and we got together. So I was so excited about that running. Let's just put it this way, rather than running down there, we need a change. We need a change from our past 8 years. We need a change of those who've said, do this, do that. We've got such a murky thing where people are yay or nay, whatever else. We need something fresh. We need a change. We need vision, and we need capable people. So I am supporting you, and I endorse you.
Thank you, and that means a lot to me. Obviously,
I want you to be our mayor.
No, thank you.
I'm praying, so we'll certainly work. So you got to put not just say it, you got to put action to it.
Yeah.
So we're voting one.
Yeah.
Ed,
Yes.
a passing quote for me.
I was going to say, hang on. Church is happening this Sunday, right, Shaun?
I hope so.
I don't know who's preaching. It might be someone
That's got a bald head, good-looking fella.
Well, that doesn't really narrow it down at this church.
Yes, I am preaching at
You're
the 8 a.m. and 9:30, live streaming the 9:30.
Yes.
And then at 2:30 p.m. we have our community markets.
Yes.
So we have those all happening there. Now, there's enough time for you to find a quote. Was that okay? Did you have enough time or did you not make it?
Oh, yeah, I got something. Sure,
Okay, tell me, what have you got as a quote?
God blocked it because better is coming.
God blocked it because of better is coming. Okay,
Better
very
is
good.
coming,
Here's
yeah.
my quote,
Yes,
okay?
yes.
People forget how fast you did a job, but they remember how well you did it.
Oh, very
People
nice.
forget how fast you did a job, but they remember how well you did it.
Very good,
We look
Shaun.
forward to seeing you all on the weekend. Be blessed. We'll see you Sunday.
Bye.